What does Pope Francis's death mean for LGBTQ Catholics around the world? What will his legacy be on this issue, and what's next for the church? Hi, my name is Cade. I almost became a conservative Catholic priest and now live my life as an openly gay man and comment about what's happening in the world of Catholicism. It's currently 7 a.m. on Monday. It was just an hour ago that I was informed about Pope Francis's passing, and I am sad, and I think we are all going to be grieving his loss. Regardless of your religion or beliefs, whatever you think, it's sad when somebody passes away. And as somebody who's been gay and Catholic, I'm especially sad to see Pope Francis passing. So today I want to talk about Pope Francis's record, and I want to explain the complex documents around Catholic teaching on a number of different things and simplify it for people to understand from the outside world. I will say this about Pope Francis. Pope Francis has drastically changed how the Catholic Church approaches and talks about this issue. He may never have officially changed church teaching, but how millions and hundreds of millions of people experience the church on this issue has drastically changed for the better. I got some notes here that I put together right before filming here, so this will be off the cuff, but there are a few key moments from Pope Francis's life that I want to go through. The thing that Pope Francis might be most well known for on LGBT issues is his quote, "Who to judge?" talking about celibate Catholics who want to pursue Jesus, and he says, "Who am I to judge?" The media took that and ran and looked at this a number of different ways. But what he meant is that people who are LGBTQ, whether they're celibate or non-celibate, are welcome within the church. The church may not have officially changed its teachings out there, but it has said you are welcome, you are valued, and you are loved by God. And though the church still takes kind of a love the sinner, hate the sin approach, just saying you are welcome here was a massive leap forward. One of the other things that Pope Francis has gotten into a ton of trouble for is inviting trans women to the Vatican to be at these large dinners. Pope Francis never said anything about the philosophy, the theology, the identity of trans folks. He did not fundamentally change. But just by inviting people to the Vatican to eat at these large meals was enough to upset conservatives. Though Pope Francis has said things like he condemns gender ideology and a number of things on trans issues that are quite conservative, he invited them to the table, which was a giant leap forward. He also backed ministries like Father James Martin in the US, who's one of the leading priests who does LGBT ministry, who doesn't change church teaching, but just says, maybe we can say welcome, maybe we can greet people with their first name, maybe we can accompany people. That's all he's saying, and Pope Francis to back this particular priest was a huge step forward. Pope Francis also seemed to hint at the idea of civil unions or some sort of protection for queer families. And though he never said gay marriage is okay, he said maybe we need protections. He also said you should not kick your gay children out of the house. Just hinting at that idea was a massive leap forward, because for a lot of Catholics, this was the issue they never wanted to talk about. This was the most important issue. And Pope Francis said, maybe we're all sinners. That even people who are Catholic still sin. Whether you lie or you miss prayer from time to time or you're gay, whatever it is, we are all at the table and we are all sinners. And that was a huge step forward. He also allowed in some ways for blessings of gay unions, of gay marriages. He said, quote, "We cannot bless sin," meaning that he does not support gay marriage, but he said, maybe these gay couples are sacrificing for each other. Maybe there's something akin to straight relationships or valuable in these relationships. Though he never changed church teaching, he used the F slur in many ways. Just saying you are welcome at the table and you are loved was enough to move the needle forward. Pope Francis also worked behind the scenes to remove a number of very conservative bishops from ministry who were harming people on this issue, who were approaching this with way too much harshness. And he also said a few years before his passing that being gay is not a crime, because in many places in the world, being gay can get you sent to jail. And Pope Francis said, even if we think it's a sin, even if we keep the church teaching the same, people should not be kicked out of their homes, people should not lose their jobs, people should not go to jail for simply loving. And so those are some of the things that he did. And I think this is important if you're not Catholic and don't know what this issue was like beforehand. Before Pope Francis came into office, homosexuality was like the third rail. Sexual issues were like the most important thing, whether you go to heaven or hell or not, whether you are inside or outside of the church. And Pope Francis went from this language around these degenerates, these people out there, to saying, hey, you're welcome at the table. Yes, we might think that you're sinning, but it's one of many sins. We want you here, that you are on your own journey, that from the moment you walk in the church doors, we don't have to be condemning you, that you can have a seat at this table, and then we can have those conversations on what to do, that God loves you, and then we can talk about what does God's love mean for your life. Pope Francis also put these documents out about divorced and remarried Catholics potentially being able to receive communion, gay people potentially being able to receive communion. He said, you are all welcome here. What will Pope Francis's legacy be on this issue? He moved from condemnation to conversation on this issue. He may never have said you are affirmed and that you can marry, but he said that you are welcome. You have human dignity. You being gay is not the worst conceivable thing that you can do. It's not like hurting other people. That you are welcome here and we can have a conversation. He also talked about humanization, that gay people aren't the people out there, that the gay people are here inside of the church, that it is your brother, it is your mother, it is your priest, that there are people inside of the church that are human first, that are people first made in the eyes of God, and then gay second. He also had this brilliant media strategy where with his quotes, he knew how they were going to be received, he knew what he was doing, and what he wanted to signal to the world is that we want you back in the church. That he said you are welcome, and so many LGBT people who had been condemned in previous decades, people who had left the church over these extreme teachings said, maybe we can go back to church. And that is a beautiful thing. Long before I knew that I was gay, long before I knew the intricacies of Catholic Church teaching, and long before I wanted to become a Catholic priest, I remember when Pope Francis was elected. I was in 5th grade in 2013, and our priest came up the stairs and said, Habemus Papam. We have a pope, we have a father. And even though I didn't know the intricacies of Catholic teaching or politics, what I heard from everybody around me was that Pope Francis was different. After his election, he decided to start living in a small guest house instead of these lavish Vatican apartments. That he got rid of a lot of the pomp and circumstance and jewels and bedazzled expensive vestments, instead focusing on the poor. Everybody inside of the church knew that Pope Francis was different. And so what's next for the church? I think many LGBTQ Catholics in this waiting period between the passing of Francis and the next pope are worried. Many feel in limbo right now. And I think historically, when I was inside of the church, we always felt like political pawns, like a game of hot potato going between Vatican offices. And I think a lot of people are worried about what the next pope could bring in. So a few things on like election mechanics. Pope Francis has appointed the majority of people who will be voting for the next pope. And there are people from previous popes in there, but during his time as pope, he's also appointed a number of people. So the hope is that there will kind of be a continuation of his ministry. And I think there's two possible futures for the church. One is just continuation. A pope who maintains this person first, teaching second type of method. Lead with the love of God, and then we can talk about the details from there. And I hope this is what happens. I don't think the next pope's going to be more progressive, is going to actually change church teaching on any of these issues. What people are worried about is that because Pope Francis was further left than ever before, that statistically speaking, we're probably going to go a little bit more conservative in the church. I don't think this pope will repudiate or get rid of Francis's approach, but that they're going to allow conservative bishops to go off the rails and have leeway. They're going to take away many protections for employees, and that the next pope is going to stop enforcing guardrails. That the next pope might not break up LGBT ministries, but he might not allow for creations of new ones. That this issue is going to get thrown to the side. And it's a hard thing to communicate to people who don't know what it's like to be gay and Catholic. But I think many gay Catholics in the church aren't looking for a huge revolution. They're not looking for the next pope to update every single teaching. What I think people want is a pope that just says, you are welcome, you belong here, and Jesus loves you. And we'll figure out everything else on the teachings once you understand that you are loved. And I think that alone changes lives. That with an institution of nearly 1.5 billion people, it is a slow-moving ship that the Pope as captain has to turn, and it takes a long time to respond. Even though I would have loved for him to say, we love gay marriage, and I would have loved for him to have not used derogatory language at times. I think just by starting the conversation, just by accepting people and talking later, I think that alone has changed lives. It has prevented so much harm for millions of people out there. That has fundamentally shifted this conversation. And I doubt that the church will change its doctrine in my lifetime. But I know that with Pope Francis, we were safer inside of the church. And I hope that the next pope can say, we want people to feel safe inside of the church. I hope whoever the next pope is can see that people have human dignity. If you want to join into this conversation, I'd encourage you to join my Discord for $1 a month, talking with a number of people about this issue on both sides of it. And if you want to support this work and make it possible, consider supporting this on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next episode.